I'm sure it's a question a lot of people have asked themselves recently, but why haven't property prices, particularly why haven't residential property prices fallen dramatically yet? It's a question I ask myself all the time, and I have to question, surely the lack of supply isn't the only reason. Historically, when there is an economic slowdown, property prices crash, and right now we're looking at a slowdown anywhere between 10 and 15% globally. That should indicate a massive fall off in property prices, particularly within the commercial sector and within the residential sector. However, that's not what is happening. 64% of countries around the globe are reporting that residential property prices are going up. And it's actually trending globally that residential prices have increased by 4% in 2020. In my mind, that doesn't really make much sense considering we are looking at a global slowdown of 10 to 15%. I borrow this phrase of someone who is a subscriber to this channel, and if you're not subscribing already, make sure you hit that ring notification and you subscribe to the channel. But they basically explain it going, there's a zombie apocalypse going on right now, but for whatever reason, property prices decide to go up. But make sure you stay watching to the very end, because I'm going to try explain something that has dawned on me right now in regards to why property prices have remained reasonably stable and why supply levels haven't increased. While house prices in Ireland have remained reasonably stable within 2020, there are some signs now of some price drops, and that is kind of in line with the property price lag theory, which I've discussed in previous videos. However, commercial prices have dropped considerably already. I've mentioned it in past videos. I mentioned it even at the start of the year that the likelihood is offices and retail investments could drop anywhere between 10 and 20%. That has already started to happen. And what's surprising about this is supply is quite limited within those sectors. For an investment point of view, there's way less on the market right now than there was last year. However, even though supply is limited, the prices have continued to drop. So the lack of supply within the commercial sector, particularly within the commercial investment sector, has not been enough to stabilise prices, and prices have dropped. But why then is the lack of supply within the residential market helping to keep prices up, and in some cases actually driving prices even higher? Well, there are many factors that impact price or affect price. A lot of people will say the easy way to explain it is supply and demand, and it can get more complicated in regards to adding in price elasticity to your supply and demand curves. But realistically, supply and demand are actually the outcome of other economic factors. And those economic factors are the drivers of where prices for properties should be. So what are the economic factors? So on the supply side, we still have the same amount of houses we had in Ireland as we did last year in terms of the overall stock of houses. But what is actually more noticeable is we have 20% less houses on the market than we did last year. And everyone is pointing to that as the main driver for keeping prices up. There is also a fear that we are heading into a recession and there is going to be a limited amount of new houses built in the next few years. But just because there's less houses on the market at any one time doesn't automatically mean the actual price of that house or the price of all the houses within Ireland are going up. Look at it from a commercial point of view. We have the same amount of commercial properties as we did last year, as we do this year. However, prices have dropped considerably, and they've dropped considerably not because the supply levels have dropped or the supply levels have got even more. They've dropped considerably because demand has dried up. There's a fear out there, or there is a lack of confidence out there in terms of demand for offices and demand for retail going into the future. There are some landlords out there who are holding properties. They're not planning to sell them at all, but they have devalued their properties, some as much as 26%. Demand factors can be more important to the price than supply factors. This was evident in Ireland within our last recession or the last property crash. We pretty much had reasonably enough the same number of houses on the market as we do right now during the last recession. However, prices were down probably 40 to 50% of where they are now. And the main reason for that is not that the supply levels had changed much between now and then, but what the big difference was, demand levels were way down. And demand levels were way down because access to credit was next to impossible. From a demand side, everyone may want to own a house, but not everyone will be in a position to buy a house. And if less people are in a position to buy a house, demand will fall. Let's look at the economic factors that actually fuel demand. So GDP is down. This means that there's less funds within the economy and there's less funds to buy property. It also means that the government will need new sources of revenue. In most cases, what they go after is income tax. It's the easiest one for them to generate quick gains. And if they go after income tax, it means that there's less money out there within the economy to buy property. And this will have a negative impact on demand. Unemployment is up from about 5% to 16% this year. That means there's less potential buyers or less potential people who can get a mortgage. Granted, some people may say that a huge amount of the unemployment is within the hospitality sector or younger kind of age group who wouldn't have been looking for mortgages to begin with, but there definitely will be a knock-on effect with the level of unemployment in regards to who can afford to buy a property. Interest rates remain stable, which is great news for the economy and also great news for the housing market, and it will hopefully help with the demand side. But when we're talking about interest rates, we're also talking about the availability of capital, because what that means is how much people can borrow and how much they can afford to pay back. Inflation is another important factor to consider when buying an investment property. However, inflation has run at such a low level over the last few years. I don't think it's going to be a major factor in most people's minds when they're considering buying a property, especially a residential property. So I kind of feel like I'm happy enough to discount any impacts of inflation, particularly in the residential market for the next few years. I don't think it's going to have a major impact. The final kind of, or one of the final kind of factors that come into play in regards to demand is consumer confidence. Consumer confidence, especially from an investment point of view, is very damaged in the office and within the retail sectors. It has remained reasonably stable within the residential market, and people have remained reasonably buoyant in regards to property prices, hence why people are trying to buy properties. There is probably a little bit of people who are looking to get on the ladder as quickly as they possibly can right now before anything might happen in terms of their loan approval or their employment status. So some of that pent-up demand or consumer confidence mightn't actually be to do with how they feel property prices might actually go over the next year or two, but there might be just more concern that they've got mortgage approval and they need to act on it quickly. I recently heard someone compare the delay in market reaction, particularly within the residential side, to an ocean earthquake and a delayed tsunami. So right now, think about it this way: the earthquake would be COVID and the lockdowns, and right now the tide is going out and the tsunami is on its way. If Ireland sat back for the last 9 months and did nothing, this tsunami that's coming our way would have obliterated businesses and wiped out a lot of value from a home point of view. However, Ireland didn't just sit on its hands for the last 9 months. There's a lot has been done, and effectively Ireland has put up protections. And let's view it this way: Ireland has put up a seawall before this tsunami hits. The lockdowns have been hard and they've definitely impacted businesses, and there's a lot of people unemployed, but you could easily argue that they were worth it because they've saved people's lives. So effectively what I believe is kind of happening, or the easier way to explain this, is over the last few months we've built a seawall, and that seawall could have been built on better foundations and there could have definitely been better methods to build a seawall, but there is protections in place. The Irish government have put billions into healthcare. They've also put way more into social welfare and wage protections and grants to businesses. So they are all the protections that are being put in place at the moment. That has been bolstered as well by the massive improvement in global exports from the pharmaceutical industry. And lucky enough, Ireland has been able to borrow at record low interest rates. Granted, we'll probably have to pay that back in taxes over the next few years or decades, But right now, the borrowing at these low interest rates definitely outweigh any negatives we'll have to pay down the line. GDP hasn't fallen as much as most expected it would. This is mainly due to an increase in exports, as I mentioned, within the pharmaceutical industries, and that has definitely bolstered Ireland's position, and particularly from an international point of view, Ireland are doing quite well. This seawall of social welfare and topped up by improved exports will hopefully protect us from this oncoming tsunami. As the tide reduces, those social welfare blocks will be removed from the wall and there will be some spillover. Brexit is probably going to hit that wall like an oil tanker, and luckily enough we have the wall now. I think we have the wall thanks to COVID, which should protect us from the Brexit wave, but it definitely will have an impact as well into next year. Hopefully that impact will be, or that oil spill effectively will be helped to be cleaned up by Europe and by Biden as well. So hopefully the damage from Brexit won't be as bad as most people expect. So what does this all really mean for property prices next year? Property prices have already started to slip a little bit. Recent report just out actually, by the CSO have stated that prices are down 1% nationally and 2% in Dublin. These are prices from September, compared from September last year to September this year. There's always a few months of delay within these reports, but effectively they're saying nationally prices are down on an average by 1%, and within Dublin on an average they're down by 2%. As I've said in other videos before, I'm not a big fan of using overall averages because they don't show the full picture. Some areas around Ireland actually saw an increase. The Midlands saw an increase of 4%. A lot of this will be down to this whole work from home craze, which I don't think will last. And new homes have actually increased by 1% as well. That can be explained by the government's introduction of the extra 10 grand for first-time buyers. But the Midwest saw a price reductions year on year of 5.7%, and Dublin City saw a price reduction of 4.2%. Generally speaking, cities do react quicker to price shifts, and that is kind of proven all around the world. So it's not unexpected that Dublin city is showing a price reduction of 4.2% right now. Most cases that will start to move out across the country. Perhaps the price reduction in Dublin City is akin to Dublin looking out onto Dublin Bay, seeing this oncoming tsunami and basically saying, well, we've built our seawall and this is going to protect us from most of the damage, but there will be some waves that will make it over the top, and those waves will eventually cross the entire country. In the last crash, the biggest impact on prices was lack of demand. The lack of demand was mainly due to the lack of credit. It doesn't seem that that's going to happen this time round. It seems that credit should still be available, so hopefully prices will be reasonably steady. But one thing that's important to look at is the level of mortgage arrears. In the last crash in 2008, mortgage arrears were at 3% of mortgages were in arrears above 90 days. It took nearly 5 years for mortgage arrears to hit their peak. They hit their peak around 2013-14 when nearly 14% of mortgages were in arrears over 90 days. Right now we're hovering in around 5.6% of mortgages that are in arrears beyond 90 days, and it looks like we're kind of steady in that in terms of 5.6%. However, recent reports are suggesting that nearly 4,000 homes have gone into arrears since the start of the lockdown. That data is a few months old, and I'm imagining that number is far higher, and we'll get a better picture of the number of properties that are in arrears probably in early 2021. But hopefully the government will step in and protect some of these vulnerable people who are in mortgage arrears. But it is an important thing to note in terms of supply levels, because as obviously more mortgages go into arrears, there is a likelihood that more properties may come on the market. I've mentioned it before in other videos that I use a tool called IPI in regards to carrying out valuations or looking at the market trends and so on. But it's quite easy to see that there is an upward trend in regards to the number of properties that are actually selling and the number of properties that are actually on the market as well. When I looked at the data for early May of this year, there was roughly around 700 properties had completed within May, within Dublin. Right now, the last 2 months, we're at about 1,200, 1,300 properties that are completing within Dublin. That's not very far off where we would have been this time last year. This time last year, we would have been around 1,400, 1,500 properties selling in a normal month within Dublin. So we're not far off where we would have been last year in terms of volumes of properties actually completing. So I kind of believe that a small increase, and it looks like we are trending up in regards to the number of properties that are coming onto the market. So a small increase in the volume of properties being transacted will bring us back in line with last year's numbers. With all of this in mind, and given all the stats that are available out there over the last few months and all the negative news stories in regards to a global recession, etc., I was very surprised that more people hadn't opted to put their property on the market if they were considering selling. But I've just realised, and this has come from, I have a number of acquisition instructions, I have a number of commercial acquisitions and a number of residential acquisitions instructions. They're all in Dublin right now, so it's not a fair reflection across Ireland as a whole, but it's a reasonable snapshot of Dublin in regards to kind of the properties that I'm looking at it. But it dawned on me, over the last 6 months, I would estimate that nearly 70% of the properties that I viewed on behalf of clients were actually vacant. And what dawned on me was I haven't fairly or accurately given enough weight to the fear factor that's out there. And the fear factor, what I mean is people are afraid to let other people in their home. Hence why a huge amount of the properties that are on the market right now are vacant. But right now, it's a huge amount of people who would be maybe considering selling probably aren't, because they don't want people in their home. They don't want to risk their families getting sick. So therefore, they don't want people coming in. Obviously, landlords get a bad rap all the time, but they're not that bad. I don't think if a landlord was considering selling but has tenants in place, I don't think a landlord is going to be looking to be arranging for agents to be going in and out of that property and viewings of that property when their tenants are still in situ. So bearing all that in mind, I really just didn't think of this fear factor of COVID that is out there, that people just don't want other people within their homes and they're not willing to let other people come in and view their homes, even if they do want to sell it. Perhaps everyone realised that, and I'm just copping onto it now, but I knew it would have been there a little bit, but I'm now kind of really thinking that I really underestimated the fear factor that people had out there. I think this theory will be tested later in 2021 when most people, or when people start to get vaccinated. Sellers or would-be sellers may actually become more confident to let people into their house. So therefore, it will, the vaccine, the news of the vaccine over the last few days actually might be a good thing for supply, and supply might increase later into 2021. So overall, in summary, I believe supply will improve next year. It might be later next year, but supply will improve next year. I think demand will soften a little bit and prices probably will come down a little bit as well. I've said it in other videos, it could be anywhere between kind of 5 to 10%, or if not more. In other areas, they will fall more than that. But generally speaking, I kind of feel that the market could come down anywhere as a whole, somewhere in around kind of 5 to 10%. I will do another video, another update video before the end of the year, mid-December, trying to capture some more of Q4 data maybe. So I will do another video before the end of the year. And if you have liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to share it with anyone, I would love that too. I would very much appreciate a share here. And also, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.